Pope Francis has arrived at the Vatican after being discharged from hospital. Sitting in the passenger seat, Francis was driven into the Vatican after leaving Rome's Gemelli hospital earlier on Sunday, following a 5-week stay to be treated for pneumonia. The car carrying Francis left the hospital shortly after noon and was accompanied through Rome by a convoy of police vehicles towards the Basilica of St. Mary Major. The pontiff, who has a special devotion to the church and goes there frequently, returned to the Vatican shortly after the visit. 88-year-old Francis made his first public appearance since February 14 by waving to well-wishers from a balcony moments before he was discharged. The Pope's doctor said on Saturday it would still take a lot of time for his aging body to fully heal, and said they had prescribed the pontiff to further take 2 months of rest at the Vatican. For more on this, we now are joined by Cardinal Stephen Brislin of the Southern African Catholic Bishops' Conference. Cardinal Brislin, good evening. Thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it. I guess the Catholic world is letting out a big sigh of relief as the Pope has been discharged from hospital, which are signs of recovery and that his health is steadying. But it begs questions around whether or not there's need to be conversations to be had about what is expected from the Pope as far as his program of activities are concerned, and the leadership role he plays in the church, given that he's of a particularly advanced age and has a frail and ailing body. Given this moment, are there conversations being had from the ground up about potentially expecting less visibility into the future from the Pope?
Thank you, and good evening to you and to all your viewers. You're quite right, of course, the Pope is of an advanced age now. He's 88 years old and going on to 89. And his body, as you could see on the picture that was taken and that you showed, his body is frail and was very swollen. It's quite clear that Pope Francis will have to slow down, particularly, of course, for his convalescence period, which they say will take at least 2 months. And I think even after that, he will not be able to endure that rigorous schedule that he has always set for himself. He really has worked himself, as much as he possibly could, and has a grueling schedule. That's not going to happen. But I think with this Pope, he's always been the Pope of surprises. And I'm quite certain that he's not going to simply give up now. He will continue to do what he can, and he will probably find new ways of achieving what he wants to achieve. So I think we can expect things from him and great surprises from him in the future as well. We're just enormously grateful to God and to the doctors and nurses who have looked after him so well. We are so grateful for his recovery and that God has spared him for a little bit longer, that we may have his leadership.
Is it too early to start having succession conversations?
Well, of course, you can't stop the succession conversations. They do happen. And there's lots of speculation, of course. There's even speculation that Pope Francis will resign. I personally don't think so. But of course, people are on the lookout. They are talking about possible future popes and so on. But there's nothing officially happening at the moment.
What do you think his hospitalization means for the church, particularly from a faith-based perspective? Catholics around the world had all gathered in prayer over the last 5 weeks, praying for his health and recovery, and they're now seeing the evidence of that. But this does make any one person who is Catholic and a believer in the Pope feel bittersweet at this moment. What do you think this has done for the morale of the church, but just broadly speaking, for Catholicism across the world?
Thank you very much. I think, yes, this has been an answer to our prayer. A bittersweet moment, yes, I suppose, in a sense, but the fact of the matter is we're tremendously grateful. And it's not only Catholics who've been praying for the Pope. Many people of other Christian denominations and other faiths have been praying for his recovery, because they do see in him a leader, a spiritual leader. And even in his suffering, he is giving witness to what it means to be a believer in God and a follower of Jesus Christ. We saw the same thing, I think, in Pope St. John Paul II, where he was tremendously ill, very, very sick, and yet he continued to do his ministry and fulfill his responsibilities as best he possibly could. I think one of the things that Pope Francis has said about his stay in hospital is that he's really learned the patience of the Lord, and he's seen firsthand the tireless dedication of the doctors and nurses. And I think he brings home that witness as well to all of us, to be able to have patience and endurance in times of suffering, whether it's physical suffering or spiritual suffering or emotional.
Just maybe a last question. Like you said earlier, Pope Francis has been the Pope of surprises. He has not shied away from speaking on worldly issues, particularly controversial worldly issues that needed moral guidance. The last 5 weeks in his absence, so to speak, a lot's gone on in the world. A lot of the world has fallen off of the equilibrium of peace, so to speak, that may have slightly balanced just before that. Do you hope and expect, and do Catholics hope and expect that the Pope will come back and speak to the ongoing suffering taking place in the world, especially in war-torn parts of the globe, such as we've been seeing happening in the DRC?
Absolutely. I think it's so typical of Pope Francis that his first message on being discharged from hospital, when he met the crowds for the first time, was a message of peace. And he spoke about those war-torn countries, about Palestine and Gaza and Israel, Lebanon, Ukraine, Sudan and the Democratic Republic of Congo. And he said it's time for the guns to be silenced, time for peace, time for dialogue. And that is how we should resolve our problems, not through the barrel of a gun. I think that was just so typical that he used the opportunity to bring that message of peace to people, and I'm quite sure that he will continue to do that.
Yeah. Cardinal Stephen Brislin, thank you so much for your time this evening. I really do appreciate it. Cardinal Stephen Brislin is the Southern African Catholic Bishops Conference. For more on this, we'll give you some updates a little bit later on.